When talking on a recent podcast about the Sonny Gray trade that the Cardinals have made, their manager Oli Marmol hinted that more trades could be in the offing. We'll talk about that coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. Today I want to talk about a recent podcast appearance by Cardinal manager Oli Marmol on the Foul Territory podcast, where he was discussing and being asked about Sonny Gray, and I think the hosts were kind of digging to see if they could spark a little bit more of a flame for that Yankees-Red Sox rivalry. It came out from Sonny Gray after the deal that, he never wanted to be in New York, and that, of course, stoked the flames a little bit for that rivalry. He's now with the Red Sox. He has spent time with the Yankees in the past and said that was not for me, and that was much to the delight, I'm sure, of many Red Sox fans. Sonny Gray winning them over already with just kind of his blunt delivery, and if you know the way that Sonny Gray speaks, he just kind of tells you what's on his mind, and when asked about New York, he's like, oh, no, the Yankees said I did not want to be there. My family, we didn't want, no. And so that was kind of funny. Oli doesn't necessarily feed into that, as the question was, but he does talk about Sonny Gray and drops maybe a nugget about why the trade happens in the perspective of the Cardinals and where they're heading and what Chaim Bloom's plans are. So I want to play for you really quickly that portion of this podcast clip, and then we'll kind of talk about it and dig into what could be coming soon for the Cardinals.
Hate seeing him go, but when you look at, Chaim was pretty clear on what the objectives are and what we're trying to do. Like, he said, we're not going to concede anything for this upcoming year. We're going to compete and keep the standard high, but at the same time, set ourselves up for success in the future where we show up and you're going to win. And having that type of club that's extremely competitive, and that's part of the Sonny trade. And there's going to be more down the road here shortly. So,
wait, what?
Wait,
what?
So it's unfortunate to see those type of guys go, but at the same time, you're setting yourself up for success, and everybody's on the same page as to what that needs to look like.
So that was Cardinals manager Oli Marmol. I think it was A.J. Pierzynski that sort of dropped what was that? What did you say? More trades to come? And that's not really a secret that Oli Marmol is letting out of the bag, because we know the plan. As he said, look, Chaim Bloom laid it out pretty plainly, and I really do think that that's a line that you can walk. It's a line to toe between, hey, yeah, this is going to look more like a rebuild. And they're not just saying rebuild because they want to be clear in their messaging, in the way that they want to have their fans know that the Cardinals aren't going to be conceding anything on a day-to-day basis. It may be that their talent level and their personnel is only able to muster so many wins in 2026, and that number may fall short of the postseason. And like me sitting on the outside of all of this, talking to you sitting on the outside of this, I think we're all of the opinion that, yeah, the Cardinals are very likely to fall short of the postseason in 2026. But their operation doesn't have to concede that, even though the moves that the front office is making are with a mind on the future. If the Cardinals make the playoffs in 2026 after the moves that I believe are going to continue to come, similar to the Sonny Gray trade, that is going to mean a lot of good things for the organization and how far ahead of schedule that they would be. Not anticipating that, but just stating for the record that, like, if that happens, or if they get to a point where they're even competing at the end of the season in September for a wild card spot and they end up mustering 82, 83 wins, you could really say that they're on the right path with this rebuild, which I do think there's a realm in which it never really ends up being a rebuild in terms of losing 100 games like rebuilding teams often do. Like, I think there's a realm, even when the Cardinals continue to make moves this winter that will ostensibly make them worse in the 2026 standings, that they have guys kind of come through and fill in the gaps that you don't necessarily expect, or guys that you're hopeful can do that, but you realistically can't count on it. Like, you cannot at this point count on Jordan Walker suddenly producing at a OPS plus of 120 and being a all-star caliber bat. You wouldn't count on that going into the season. But if it happened, would everybody then be kind of talking in the narrative of, oh, see, he finally has reached his potential. He has, gotten to where we all thought he could get. Like, yeah, that would be the narrative, and I think people would probably be surprised, but I don't think it's completely outside the realm of possibility that Jordan Walker, who had such a pedigree coming out, would potentially put it all together and help the Cardinals to accelerate a timeline. Some of those young arms are certainly guys that could help accelerate a contending timeline. When you think about Michael McGreevy and Matthew Liberatore, and those guys breaking in a positive direction, continuing to move in that regard, would certainly speed things up. I'm not predicting all of these things are going to coalesce and happen. I thought last year there was a reasonable chance that it would, and it didn't happen. And so to go another year later and on paper be a worse team in terms of proven talent, I can't sit here and say it's going to happen again. So I'm not trying to feed you sunshine and rainbows. But I do like the way that the Cardinals under Chaim Bloom are approaching this. I think there's better synergy with the messaging of that rather than kind of the 1 foot in, 1 foot out bland messaging that John Mozeliak carried for the final years of his tenure. I think Oli and Chaim Bloom are on the same page about all of this. But it is notable that he says, yeah, these are trades that are being made so that there will come a day for the St. Louis Cardinals again where you go into it knowing you are going to win. And that ends up being the mentality because you're a 9,500 win caliber organization year in and year out. That's the goal that the Cardinals have. We'll see over the course of time whether they can achieve that and how long it will take for them to get back to that point. But I think it's refreshing. Let's get into the notion of the trades, though. Oli Marmol makes the hint that there are more trades coming, and the pushback or kind of the prodding from AJ Pierzynski of, you want to tell us a little bit more about that? And Oli kind of gets a grin on his face and is like, don't push it. I thought that was fun. There's going to be more trades to happen. Right now, what are we looking for, Cardinals fans? What do you think comes next of all of this? Because I would say the deal that still has to happen unequivocally is Nolan Arenado. But Chaim Bloom reiterating to reporters who are down there in Orlando that they're not going to release Nolan Arenado. That is not a possible outcome for this saga. I do tend to believe that the way it could play out is the market for those premium players, however many there may be via free agency, that's more of a known, and via trade, more of an unknown of some of the names that could be made available in the trade market this offseason. The dust may have to settle on some of those names at the higher end of the market in order for Nolan Arenado's situation to then be resolved, because there are going to be teams that would say, we might take an Arenado, but at the cost or what we expect we would have to pay in salary or in a trade with the Cardinals, we would rather maybe just pursue a free agent that we think is closer to their prime performance. If we're paying the money anyway, maybe we can get a higher performer than what we expect Arenado to bring. And then maybe they'll strike out on a couple of those options and teams can circle back with the Cardinals on Arenado. That's how I generally think this will go. And I also think as that goes along, the leverage is into the hands of those other teams, even though they might become a little bit desperate to fill the need. I think those other teams will recognize, like, hey, Arenado is a player that possesses some upside because we've seen it from him before. If he's able to get on the other side of some injuries, no, you don't generally see guys ramp up their power as they get into their mid-30s. But if there is an injury health explanation for why Arenado has had the power sapped to the degree that he has, maybe he gets on the other side of that. Maybe playing in a ballpark that's not Busch Stadium would help with that regard. And he's been a very steady defender. He was still very good to my eye defensively at third base when he played in 2025. So all of these aspects, I think, can coalesce for the teams that may not have Arenado as their first pick to fill the need on the corner infield or with a third baseman, or if they're looking for a right-handed bat, whatever they're seeking specifically. Arenado can check some of those boxes. He may not be their first choice, but I think he can end up being an attractive option for a number of teams. Granted, Arenado still has to agree to go to those teams, but I think his list is going to be a lot more expansive than it was the last time around. And the Cardinals are probably going to get to a point where, because the leverage might be in the camps of those other teams, and those other teams understanding that although the Cardinals are trying to retain some semblance of leverage by publicly stating we're not going to release him, so don't think that you're just going to be able to scoop him up and pay him the minimum or whatever while we pay the bulk of his salary at other teams that are interested. That's not going to happen. You'll have to negotiate with us if you want to have him. That's a leverage ploy. I don't think Chaim Bloom is fibbing. I just think he knows that it will never get to that point. Well, the point that it will get to is the Cardinals will ultimately, if there is a minimum market for Arenado, they'll have to eat the vast majority of the salary. I don't know if that's 90%, 95%, 80%. I don't know what the number ends up being. But that could be a way that this plays out, that yes, the Cardinals pay the majority of Arenado's salary to where the team that's acquiring him would say, well, shoot, if we're paying him $5 million a year for a couple of years or whatever, that ends up being worthwhile because of the potential upside that Arenado can turn back the clocks just a little bit and give us that production. He's not the most valuable bat in our lineup. He's going to bat 6th, which allows him to sort of take the pressure off of himself. Like, there's a narrative you can craft for how the Arenado thing would work out for another team that is contending, right? If their lineup is deeper than the Cardinals lineup, then there's less pressure on this player to perform. He can just go out and be part of a winning structure, which is what Arenado craves anyway, and I think he could fit in rather well with some of those types of teams. Still kind of think the Dodgers will be the place that he ultimately lands. Don't tell me, well, the Dodgers like who they have. Doesn't matter. I think if the Cardinals get to a point where they are willing to eat enough of the money, and look, for the Dodgers, money shouldn't really even matter, but they're always able to defer a lot of the money. They signed Edwin Diaz today, one of the best closers in the game. Now they've got him just kind of adding to their treasure trove, and I'm sure they'll defer a lot of that money. But I think the Dodgers ultimately would be one where it's like, okay, there's not a lot of other ways we can really meaningfully improve. And if this guy doesn't add a lot to our payroll, why not? Let's take him. Like, I think it will get to that point where the Dodgers are just like, sure, we're already a super team. Let's add a Hall of Famer. Why not? It can't hurt. Like that, if I had to put money down, like that would be my guess as to where he ends up. That's not based in like anything that's being actively reported. If anything, we always hear, oh, the Dodgers are happy. They're not really interested. I don't know. I think if the Cardinals get to a point where they're basically giving him away, that it would be a match that would make a lot of sense. But that's still going to have to happen. And then the Cardinals are also probably circling the drain on the Wilson Contreras stuff. Again, I think that's a move that if he is open to it, you probably get a nice piece or two in return. You do shave a lot off the salary that you might be able to allocate elsewhere if they need to sign a starting pitcher, which I think they probably do. Just like it makes you better if you can spend on a more reliable anchor for that rotation to go along with some of the younger guys that you're excited about. You're hopeful and optimistic about McGreevy and Libby, and I think Kyle Leahy. I'm optimistic about Kyle Leahy as a starter. And then you got prospects behind that. Like, that could break in a really positive direction if you can get generally some good health for all of those guys. So maybe, though, you want one more pitcher, and you're able to allocate some of the resources from the Contreras deal. You've got another guy ready-made to play first base in Alec Burleson. Maybe that opens you up. It's been reported by Derek Gould that the Cardinals are not actively shopping Lars Nootbaar. We might talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. If you want to hear my thoughts on it right now, I talked with Joe Roderick today about that topic on STL Sports Central, so you can tune in and go check out their channel for that. We do that show daily, by the way. There's some people who are like, hey, your podcasts, you haven't been doing quite as many. And I say, I know, I'm trying to make them happen. But by the way, I'm talking Cardinals 4 days a week on STL Sports Central, Monday through Thursday. I've generally been on with Joe doing the updates on whatever's happening with the Cardinals. So in addition to these podcasts that I'm trying to get out as often as possible, check those out, because those are pretty consistently taking up some time throughout my days. And we're doing the stuff that we do over here, just I'm doing it with another person. So check those out. But the Lars Nootbaar thing would be like, okay, if Burley's playing first, the Cardinals really don't have a left fielder. That's obvious. Do you wish you could snap your fingers and make one of your lefty bats be a righty bat to find a little more balance, especially with Weatherholt on the way? Absolutely, you do. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to just say, 2026, the Cardinals aren't really going into the season expecting to win. Maybe Lars Nootbaar, when he's healthy from his recovery from surgery, fits into that category. And I'm planning to do another podcast Wednesday where I dive more into that notion of what to do with Nootbaar. So try to pin that to me and make me do it on Wednesday. But that's sort of where I think the Cardinals are right now, is got to do the Arenado thing, the Wilson Contreras thing. If there's an opportunity there, it makes sense because of the way it aligns the rest of your roster. And you may be able to, via some of the money saved from Arenado and especially Contreras, reallocate some resources to the pitching department to be able to maybe up your reliability for the rotation there. Because a lot of seasons we've gone in and we said, look, the Cardinals will lose 1 to 2 starters in spring training, and they'll have to, pick up the pieces from there. And so you can't really go in with just 5 that you're ready to unveil. You can't have your 6th guy be a prospect that you're hoping doesn't have to start on the big league roster, because you don't want to rush those decisions. 2025 was the once-in-a-decade scenario where the Cardinals did not have pitcher injuries to their rotation. They will not be so lucky again in 2026. I will always hold this stance and bet on the notion of being overly prepared, because there will be injuries. 2015 was really the last time that it happened, that the Cardinals made it through the season with the same 5 starters, and really that doesn't even count because Adam Wainwright tore his Achilles at the beginning of that season in the batter's box, but they did make it through spring training. And so that was really, I think, the last time that's happened. And then it happened this past year where they made it through like the whole season and used 7 starters. Leahy started a game. Steven Matz was the fill-in, and McGreevy. So 8, I guess, total starters. 7 before the very last day of the season. That's not going to happen again. So the idea that, hey, if there are limited resources, it might make some sense to reallocate what you're paying to guys like Arenado and Contreras into pitching if you can pull that do-si-do and be able to backfill the positions of third base with obviously the candidates there, Gorman, Weatherholt, see what it is with Donovan, Sajaci as candidates there, and then, be able to backfill first base with Burley. I don't know how much the Cardinals will spend on a pitcher, but I just think they're more likely to do it if they've shaved payroll elsewhere, or more likely to, instead of buying like a $5 million lottery ticket, maybe a $10 million one, and seeing how that might play out. Teams like the Royals have done this. Like when they signed Michael Wacha, you might have looked sideways and said, really, the Royals are signing Michael Wacha? Like what are they doing with a 30-some-odd-year-old pitcher? Like he's not going to be able to help them in their contending window. But then the Royals ended up being ahead of schedule, and they've been knocking on the door of the playoffs the last 2 years. They missed them this year because they need a Brendan Donovan, frankly, in their lineup. We talked about that on STL Sports Central as well, if you scroll back on that podcast feed. And they made the playoffs and won a series the season before. So that's just an example of how savvy moves by a front office. Sometimes moves are made and you go, well, that doesn't really fit the timeline. I think the Cardinals could use a pitcher that when they sign him, we go, hey, does that really fit their timeline? They're really going to spend on that right now. That would be the best thing for him, because it would show to me that their understanding of the ability to advance a timeline with good creative decisions. So we'll see what ends up happening with all of these things. But Oli Marmol hinting at the notion of more trades coming, I think he would know. And I think that's fairly evident. We just don't know the extent to which all these moves happen. Obviously, I talked about Arenado and Wilson. Those are deals they're probably trying to make. I think they're trying to make the Donovan deal because the market is dictating to them that they should. And this might be the height of his value, whereas with some other names, you might find it more beneficial to do those types of moves later. But those are my thoughts for this edition of the show. I appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in. Let me know in the comments what more you'd like to hear me discuss on the Cardinals offseason, and I'll try to double back to some Nootbaar stuff tomorrow, because I do have a firm take on what I think makes the most sense for the Cardinals to do with Nootbaar this winter. I shared it on STL Sports Central, so go check that out, and in the most recent Card Central 365 that we have done. If not, you can stay tuned for Wednesday, as I'll get into that exact topic right here on B-Schaeff Daily. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.